Hello once again from Deccan Dialogues. Through this platform, we bring to you conversations between experts on various contemporary issues of society, politics, and economics that face our nation and impact our lives. 75 years of independence is a good time to look back and assess our government structures. It is time we see whether these structures, as they have been, have served us well. Are our government structures rational? And are they driven by outcomes? Or are they merely to cater to political aspirations and to deal with identity politics? Are they driven more by political compulsions of caste and coalition politics than by the need for governance? Have these structures yielded the outcomes that our founding fathers had envisaged? Is governance fragmented to accommodate MPs and MLAs? What have been the implications of the 91st Amendment, which put a cap on the number of ministers? Are we fragmenting governance to accommodate ministers? Why do we increasingly have unwieldy governments both at the state and the center? These and more questions will be discussed by Mohan Guruswamy and Parakala Prabhakar, both of them trained economists and public intellectuals. Do press the button and subscribe if you like our dialogues. Over to you both.
I was thinking about the 91st Amendment to the Constitution, which pegs the size of a cabinet to a certain percentage of the House, 15%. So Government of India will have 87 ministers at 15%, whereas the state of Sikkim with 30 will have 4.5 ministers. Now, I was wondering whether this is the right way of organizing government. The United States government has 15 members, it's fixed by law. You have a Department of Justice, it looks after home and police, security. You have a defense, you have state, you have interior, you have which look after irrigation, lands, forests, all that. And so it's fixed at 15. Whereas the cabinet system, it involves the distribution of loads, spread out as many people as possible. And the cabinet system in a parliamentary system requires a minister, an administrator, to be also a member of the House. Whether this is the best way to do it, we just blindly brought the Westminster system to India without accommodating for India's genius to improvise on these things. Now the 91st Amendment, when it first came up, because certain states had, out of 50 members, they had 48 ministers. Because it was all, everybody wanted a share of something. So they said this must be kept, this is obscene. Even politicians realized. So they said 10%. The Vajpayee government started this in 1999. At the time they passed it in 2003, it had gone to 15%. Because they had to accommodate lots of people. Even then, I think that 87 departments for government of India, is excessive. In a large company, say Maruti's factory, you will have a head of production, a head of marketing, a head of procurement, a head of human resources. You will have heads of functional areas. And under them you have other functional areas. Now, here we will have a Ministry of Agriculture without rural development in it, without irrigation in it, without roads, rural roads in it. So all this will fall into different. So when you have a Minister of Agriculture, he has to deal with 9 other people.
And fertilizer is different.
Fertilizer is different.
Yes.
So, is this the best way to organize? After all, we are a mismanaged system. We are certainly a mismanaged economy. And part of that mismanagement, a good part of that is because of our organization. The kind of organization you have will determine your outcome. That's the first lesson of public administration. Your organization determines your outcome. We know that. In an army you don't have, which is on an offensive, is a mobilized public administration with weapons. You have certain divisions very clear. You will do procurement, you will do recruitment, you will do training. We don't have this in the government. So is this government system we have, is it geared for good governance? So I thought I'll throw this idea up to you and see how you react to it.
I think this is the time, because we are marking 75 years of India's independence, and Har Ghar Tiranga, and you've got some events, and people tend to forget after that. But I would like to use this year-long celebrations not just to celebrate, but to introspect, to think about, and to bump of ideas, and examine very critically, almost like a forensic audit. How was our journey, and what we have been doing in administration and legislation, and executive and judiciary. These are the broad arms of a state. Are the outcomes matching up with the dreams and aspirations of our founding fathers, and what we thought, what we expected, or what people aspired to? Are they really delivering? Now, if you keep that in mind and see, how are we organizing our government? How are we organizing our legislature? Now, you raised a very important point. Now, in order to be a member of a cabinet or a council of ministers, you necessarily will have to be a member of the legislature. Now, to some extent, this compromises the strict division of powers between the legislature, executive, and judiciary. The classic division of powers among these three is that if you are a member of judiciary, you cannot be a member of the executive. If you are a member of executive, you cannot be a member of the judiciary. Similarly, if you are a member of executive, you cannot be a member of the legislature. If you are a member of legislature, you cannot be a member of the executive. But here, in the a la the Westminster system, we have, you necessarily will have to be a member of the legislature in order to be a member of the executive. I think this is some kind of an anomaly we need to really focus on. This is one. And you're talking about the number of ministers. Now, I think the ministers are selected not strictly on the basis of their competence or their efficiency or their knowledge, domain expertise, but to accommodate various interests within the party, or if it were a coalition government, the partners of the coalition, and that also dictates what you talked about, creation of different, unnecessarily large number of departments, and agriculture has nothing to do with power, it has nothing to do with fertilizer, nothing to do with cooperation, nothing to do with irrigation. These are different ministries, and there, you have interministerial conferences, committees, go into a lot of wastage of time. There is absolutely no coordination.
And departmental perspectives are
Departmental
totally
perspective, tough battles.
Very interestingly, I once came across a case when I was in government. My minister said, there is a problem on this power plant coming up. Why don't you sit in the meeting with the other secretaries and try to resolve it? It was a tussle between the Department of Power and the Department of Expenditure. So I sat in the meeting and I was looking through the file at that time. I suddenly realized that the Department of Expenditure, which was opposing that proposal vehemently, saying we cannot have this, that file was signed by the same expenditure secretary as power secretary. So I said, hey,
The same individual.
Same individual.
Yes.
I won't mention his name, but I said, you have signed this, recommending it strongly to government, and here you are opposing. He said, then, I was power secretary. Now I'm expenditure secretary. But I said, are we interested in the power plant or no? He said, no. I've got my budget to look after. Let that power secretary now fight for it. And
So it's a tough battle.
Government must decide. So ask your minister to decide. I said, minister is trying to reconcile these things. No, you have to fight this battle each day, every day, on every issue.
See, there is no rationalization. Mohan, I remember, I'm sure you also remember, when Rajiv Gandhi became the Prime Minister, he rationalized a bit. He created what is called the Human Resources Development Ministry, under which there is education, there is youth and sports, there is women and child
Absolutely,
welfare.
brilliant idea.
You know, all these things are brought. And he created what is called the surface transport, under which
Civil
aviation,
railways, everything.
railways, you know, and shipping,
absolutely.
everything was, you know, under that. I think, I don't know why they've gone back on it and then again bifurcated and, you
see what
dismembered those.
The bureaucracy is most resists the most. Because Secretary Civil Aviation and Secretary Surface Transport are two secretaries.
Yeah.
But if you have a
they want their own fiefdoms.
If you have a Department of Transportation, then you have only one secretary. So I suggested at some stage that you have a principal secretary and have all these other secretaries under him. And then you have a senior minister and half a dozen other ministers under him. So he coordinates.
Junior ministers.
So you can still divide government into functional areas like agriculture. You have a agriculture ARD department, and then under that you have all the other departments aligned under that. And then you have several secretaries and one principal secretary agriculture. So if you have a principal secretary of defense, why can't you have a principal secretary agriculture?
Yeah.
So you restructure government.
You have it in finance, you have it in defense.
You have it in finance, but in the finance ministry, it's only by name, but he doesn't preside. He can't tell the expenditure secretary what to do or the revenue secretary what. But here he coordinates. He actively coordinates. The principal secretary of defense actually coordinates defense production and other departments there. But not so if you reorganize government this way. So you need a full-scale structural reorganization. That means you don't have 2 layers of ministers. Now you have 3 layers of ministers. You have maybe between the Prime Minister and the Cabinet Minister, you have a senior minister, who maybe is a deputy Prime Minister. That's why certain countries have deputy Prime Ministers. It's not a function of stature, but it's a function of responsibility. So you can have 5 deputy Prime Ministers or 5 senior ministers. But then the Prime Minister should be willing to cede control.
Yeah.
Prime Minister of India, today I'm told, sees something like 670 files a day. He's meant to dispose it off. He doesn't read anything. First,
No, it's very highly centralized now.
It's highly centralized. Even I have a friend who's an IG of police. He was DIG in the Central Police Force, promoted to IG. For 7 months, his file was pending on the Prime Minister's office. Prime Minister had to sign it off. There were 10 other people in that. But till that file was signed by the Prime Minister, he didn't get his promotion.
But why should the Prime Minister sign all these? And why should the Chief Minister sign all these?
Precisely. Look at the loss to him. As IG, he would have got a different pension.
Yeah.
Anyway, individual loss apart. But the Prime Minister approves every public sector board of directors. You become Director of State Bank, Prime Minister has to approve. So all these
Cabinet Committee on Appointments, yes.
Why does it have to go to him? Why is it so centralized? When I went to the Forbidden City in Beijing for the first time, there was a beautiful sign behind the throne. 2 letters, Chinese characters. So I asked them, what is it? So the guy said, this is what it means. It says, no work. That is, by the time you come to the emperor, there's nothing to be done.
Yeah, everything is disposed of.
Do nothing. It's all done, decentralized. Our Prime Minister needs a do nothing sign outside us. Prime Minister needs to preach, use it as a pulpit to preach.
And give leadership.
Give leadership, provide conditions to good government, coordinate other departments. So that he's micromanaging. Every time I went out on tour, it had to be okayed by the PMO.
Yes.
Little initial.
Yeah. Now look at the same thing is replicated at the state level.
Absolutely.
Now you have the Chief Minister's office. I have seen Chief Ministers as very normal people with normal kind of secretarial assistants. Now you have a Chief Minister's office, Principal Private Secretary to Chief Minister, Secretary to Chief Minister, and there are a bunch of secretaries to the Chief Minister, and the Chief Minister has a secretariat like the Prime Minister's office. And each secretary in the chief minister's office presiding over or supervising,
It's a parallel system.
has a parallel system, it's
Jawaharlal
almost like
Nehru ran his PMO with MO Mathai and Session.
that's it. Yes.
One PS and one PA.
Yeah.
Typist, he typed. And ministers were doing running government. Sardar Patel didn't take daily instructions from Jawaharlal Nehru or Gulzarilal Nanda, whoever.
Yeah.
And cabinet used to meet to discuss.
Yes.
We had cabinets don't meet to discuss anymore. Cabinets meet to be told.
Yeah.
Like demonetization, the cabinet was asked to leave their mobile phones outside, come and sit inside, and they were told that this is a decision that has been taken. Major decision like that. Tomorrow, there is a question of war, maybe something else. You can't have one-man government. Actually, the chief minister of a state has actually got more raw power in his hand than the prime minister of India.
Yes.
A chief minister in India can get you killed. Whereas the prime minister doesn't directly control a policeman in Delhi or anywhere.
Yes.
He controls them through different other means. But chief minister can give you water, he can give you a transfer, he can give you everything. All powerful man. That's why people prefer to be chief ministers rather than cabinet ministers in Delhi.
Yes.
A home minister means nothing compared to chief minister of our state or any state. So, therefore, we need to look at this. When we talk about reforms, we always talk about Manmohan Singh's 1991 reform. What was that reform? It only abolished the industrial licensing policy and the Directorate of Industrial Development. There used to be a board. There used to be a man called Swaminathan or Subramaniam or something like that. All powerful man. Additional Secretary to Government. He was head of the Directorate of Technical Development, DGTD, Director General Technical, Additional Secretary. But outside his office, you will find the captains of industry sitting because he decided.
Yeah.
So he decided in early 90s, 70s, that India needs 100 ECG recorders a year. Decided.
That's it.
That's it. So I went for a manufacturing license. I got a license of 50. He said, I'm giving you 50% of the market. I said, sir, the market is much bigger. At 50%, I don't have a scale of economies of scale. He said, then don't come into this business. We have decided that it will be 100. He decided that pocket calculators, desktop calculators, you need only 900
Per annum.
per annum. So DGTD was, so he dismantled that. It's a wonderful thing, and nobody cried for it.
But at that time, that was perhaps the right time to also look at the administrative reform.
Absolutely, and we have not done a thing about it.
Yes.
We've created a highly centralized system. Everybody.
But when I look at it, Mohan, I think we have more or less continued with a little tampering here and there, with tinkering a little bit, the British system of governance.
Absolutely.
And the British, although it was British administration, largely, in terms of land revenue, in terms of irrigation, in terms of many other things, even endowments, etc., British have copied it from the Mughals to a large extent, and of course modernized and filing system and things like that. So today we are not very materially different, and qualitatively very different from what but ironically, the British have given up all that in their own country, but we still do follow that kind of a...
we have a phrase in India which doesn't occur anywhere else in the world, to enjoy power.
Yeah, enjoy power.
Power is absolute enjoyment. You're sitting in a chair, you're going to enjoy it. You're becoming a vehicles inspector, you're going to enjoy it. Or you become a minister, you enjoy it. But what has become is turned into a rigid control system. You look at the way the government of India is structured. I always hold this as an example. 42% of the total wage bill is paid by central government.
Yes.
47% by state governments. So you've got 89 and it's 11% by local government. So at the level at which people are dealing with governments, people are going to serve people, government which is going to serve people, we have only 11%. That means for every 9 people who will tell you what to do, you got one fellow who will do something for you. This is how government is structured.
Now let's look at the political aspect of it. Now we have ministers, not because they are domain experts, because you see now, I don't know about 40 years ago, 50 years ago what it was, and what kind of expertise was demanded of ministers, because ministers were by and large, they were not experts, they were not so very well educated. But today the politics and governance of the country is much more policy driven, you data driven, you have systems in place, you need to understand things, you need to see how the processes are going on. But when this kind of a evolution has taken place, but the people who preside over, just because very rightly in a democracy they say that we are people's representatives and we've got elected, we've got people's mandate, but then what is the kind of compromise that we are striking? We are taking people on the basis of their identity, their caste, their religion, their region, and probably if it is a coalition
True,
government.
you raised this issue earlier of conflation of the executive and the legislature.
Yes.
Now you got to separate them. How do you do it? Because in our system, it's answerable to Parliament.
Yeah.
So you can have a minister answering Parliament without having to be a member of the House. You remember in the case of Indira Gandhi's interim judgment in the Justice Krishna Iyer said she can be a member of Parliament, she can be Prime Minister, but she cannot vote.
Yeah.
So you can have extend that system and have all these guys as ministers, not allowed to take part in discussion.
Yeah.
They're taking part in discussion, but
Yeah.
not voting.
Yeah. They don't decide on the they don't count as numbers, but they can come and give their opinion, throw light on issues.
Absolutely.
Because
and
of
then
their,
answer. Why didn't you do this? Why did this happen?
Yes.
As they should answer. But the famous story of a man called Meherchand Khanna, who was Minister for Rehabilitation in Delhi. He had that time after partition, they were giving away houses and properties to refugees. So there was a lot of demand for properties. So Meherchand Khanna, there's a market also named after him in Delhi. So he one day called the secretary, who was a well-known ICS officer. He said, how does this system work? So the secretary said, sir, you make the policy. You decide what kind of people will get these houses and shops. And I will do the allocation. So the minister said, no. I will do the allocation, you make the policy.
Because, so that they can give out.
Yeah, so you are better suited to make policy. You're an educated man, you're a trained man, आप civil service, ICS exam pass किए, आपको तजुर्बा है, आप policy बनाइए. मेरे में क्या है, मैं अनपढ़ आदमी हूँ, मैं distribution कर देता हूँ. So that is how governments function now. Secretaries make policy, and the minister is only interested in implementation.
So which means that we need to rethink and recast the entire administrative structure and see that the expertise. Now you see this government, for all its misdemeanors and all its going back on promises, etc. One thing they tried to do is to bring in lateral entry into the government. Of course, there are apprehensions that they might, what kind of a people they might bring in. That's a different thing. But in principle, the lateral entry of experts into the government, maybe for 5 years or 10 years. Say, for instance, somebody like Montek Singh Ahluwalia. It was a lateral entry into the government, and it continued in the government. Did very substantial contribution to the thinking and economic policy for the country. Similarly, you can have people and universities, public universities, experts coming into the government, doing their stint, so that the academia will get the practical kind of insights when they go back to the universities, and the government will get the academic point of view and the research point of view into the government. So the government can benefit by academic viewpoint, and when the academic goes back into the universities can get some kind of a practical insight into what kind of impediments the government
the American
encounters.
System, the American system, the academic works on policies, works on ideas.
Yes.
throughout his career. So he gets a chance to bring
Come
that
into the government.
to come
Yes.
into government. And he's got a certain stature. As a professor at, say, a good university, he has a certain stature, which is many times often thought to be higher than the job he's going to
Exactly.
occupy.
Yes.
So in our system, it's not so. Rajiv Gandhi again tried to say university professor must have a certain stature in society. So he said he must be paid equivalent of a secretary to government. But professors then started getting salaries of secretary to government. But as far as the secretary to government, he was no higher than a chaprasi. So that means the system is still bearing it. The system is wrong. You can not get lateral entry because they will make your life miserable.
No, but that kind of a thing has to be facilitated so that there is a cross pollination of
You
ideas,
start
cross
right at the top,
fertilization.
then you start at the top.
Exactly. Yes.
Allow ministers
Yeah.
to be recruited on the basis of merit and say
And vetted by the legislature,
absolutely
vetted by the
House committee or
yes.
whatever. And he is minister for railways and transportation or whatever on his expertise and his administrative experience behind. So he's chosen for a job. Minister for ARD is chosen for his all-round knowledge of implementing big projects and rural
And domain knowledge.
and all that. So you get good people in government answerable to the legislature, which is how it should be. Here we've got the legislature which runs the government, which is the executive also, provides the executive, in also the legislature, which makes policy. I think you got to break that up.
And even the bureaucracy, Mohan, you have these IAS. Today he's defense secretary, tomorrow he's finance secretary, and day after tomorrow he's tourism secretary. I think at that level too, we need to bring in focus, we need to bring in expertise, and nothing wrong in an IAS officer being trained in a particular domain and continue to be in that domain. Yes, you see, for instance, if somebody is in the finance for say the last 10 years or 15 years and then presides over the finance ministry, yes, one can make a meaningful contribution. So as in defense, so as in agriculture, so as in railways.
But in the matrix system, where everybody has to rise. So state of Telangana, small state, in the old system it had only 9 districts, has got 7 chief secretaries and 8 DGPs. DGP for printing, DGP for prisons, DGP for fire services, all kinds of DGPs.
Now you see today in Telangana state, districts are so small that people who are of DIG rank are discharging the functions of an SP.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Maybe it's a good thing if you didn't decentralize government, you took government down closer to people that way by making an IAS officer in charge of an old Tehsil. In the old days, you could have had a Tehsildar who was empowered, but you couldn't do that, so you made the fellow a collector and said you are a collector now with a SP. Now, it's a good thing or a bad thing, we don't know still. Made small districts.
But I think
overall small states did perform well.
Yeah, but I think at this stage, after 75 years, we need to have a thorough audit of our administration, our legislation, our administrative structures, our legislative structures, our local bodies, how they are administered, and what kind of a representation they are able to provide.
In 1999, L.K. Advani proposed a review committee for review of government and constitution. Where
the Justice Venkatachalaya committee.
Yeah. No, it was separate. Review of government and constitution, whether you need to... huge hullabaloo. That these guys are bringing backdoor dictatorship, Hindu Raj. Imagine Modi trying it. We've lost the ability to discuss ways of making any improvements.
The review of constitution, the commission was Venkatachalaya committee.
Whatever, the review of government didn't take place at all.
Yes, they didn't take place.
Didn't take place at all.
Although he submitted a report, but there was no discussion on the report.
Because Advani said, I don't want to go near it.
Yeah.
I tried my best with good intentions. It's not going to happen, leave it.
And the document that was produced by Justice Venkatachalaya is very rich in insights. I've read it.
As a result, you created a system where, I once asked Dr. Manmohan Singh in a conversation, I said, sir, you were a young man when India became independent. This was about 20 years, 25 years ago. What do you think now of that India? So he says, one thing I've done is I'm amazed at the lack of social contract in government. So after 50 years of government himself, he says, I'm amazed at the lack of social, or the ministers, or bureaucracy, everybody, that they don't feel that they need to do something. They're all there for career's sake. I didn't say anything more or didn't say anything rude to him, because everybody is then working on career. And it happens, you see it all the time. Why do secretaries to government take vegetable baskets to a minister's house? I've seen that happen also.
Yeah.
Because they're all looking at career, they're looking at postings. Yeah. After all, now it's not enough to be a DGP, but you must be a DGP of law and order.
Yeah.
So therefore,
not just the rank.
Not just the rank.
Yeah.
So I think we need to look at this again, and maybe out of this discussion, we will get some people to think about this issue.
I think this whole discussion, in fact, you see, when we put this up, people do send comments saying that what should be done. Why don't you say what should be done? See, we are not here to tell you this is the thing that you need to be done.
Absolutely.
That needs to be done. But I think this forum is to throw up ideas, throw up issues, so that a larger discussion takes place. This is somewhere, this is some kind of a catalyst.
I hope the people who are listening to this,
Yeah.
saying this, throw up suggestions, write
Exactly.
to people saying that do something about reform, do something to change our system.
Yes.
What we've got is not good enough.
Yeah.
Thank you.